Yates, this is Navajo Grandma again, and this time we are going to talk about Sitting Bull. Now, let me show you a picture of him. Chief Sitting Bull. Here you go. We'll learn a lot about him. A great warrior chief. And there's a reason why I'm wearing red. And mainly because as far as the Native Americans now understand, when you wear red, it means that your family member who fought in any war shed their blood. And I know Chief Sitting Bull, I love to wear that in honor of him. And he did shed his blood. It was sad what happened, but a great leader and a great man. Now, here I go. I'm going to read again because I'm not a scholar and I only do research, and I'm sharing what I research. And I'm going to read again to you. Now, we're starting with the strategies of Native American chiefs, their leaders, and holy men. If Indian nations are to heal, there must be an acknowledgement of the past. It is difficult for most to understand why in America, the land where freedom of speech is a basic right, textbooks contain passages that explain the relocation of Native Americans as a willing move from their homelands to make room for the colonists. June 25, 1876 marks an important day in U.S. history. The Battle of the Little Bighorn, known to Native Americans as the Battle at Greasy Grass and known to others as Custer's Last Stand, 1876. It was a victory for the Plains Indians of the Great Sioux Nation as they defeated General George A. Custer and 226 of his men. Now here is not really a man. We don't honor him. The fact is the Cheyenne's chief's American horse and Two Moons and Lakota chief's crazy horse Sitting Bull and Gall defeated General George A. Custer and his soldiers. Their effort was strategically and tactically coordinated. It was successful as there were no U.S. cavalry survivors, and Chief Sitting Bull is often credited for this decisive victory. Now, I want to say something here that's really important. I know his great-grandson says he wants us to know that Chief Sitting Bull was not in the war. He was one of the strategists. He's the one that went and did the sundance and the prayers and the fasting and pleading with the heavens for help. He did not go and fight. In fact, I believe during the fight or what was happening, he saw some of the cavalry and the men. The natives were coming upon them, but he noticed they were so worn out. He asked the Sioux men, the warriors, to give them water. And when they did, they sent them back to their lines and they began to fight again. That is incredible in itself. And so you see the goodness of a leader. So, needless to say, there was trouble in the West. Settlers failed to respect the boundaries set by the treaties, breaking promise after promise. The history of the westward expansion was muddled by the discovery of gold in several western territories, which only added to the fire. In 1868, a new treaty deal was struck. It substantially reduced the land afforded to the tribes, but it afforded the Black Hills to the Lakota, declaring it sacred ground and vowed to keep settlers out of the region. Remember this. In 1874, General George A. Custer led an expedition into the Black Hills to determine if the rumors of gold were true. The U.S. government failed to keep the flood of miners and settlers from entering the Black Hills, violating violating the Treaty of Fort Laramie. This led to the Black Hills War in 1876. The Indians objected to the invasion of settlers and attacked. The U.S. cavalry, led by General Custer and Sheridan, responded with force. Sheridan ordered the mass murder of the buffalo, which would cut off the food supply of the Indians. If you remember, the hills and hills and hills of dead buffalo. I kind of hope he goes, you know where, for what he did. Soon the Plains, the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho banded together to protect their sacred lands, which place us in Montana in June of 1876. The Indians were wary of talk and planned a defense strategy that would lead them to victory. Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and other chiefs gathered with several thousands of followers in southern Montana in the Bighorn River Valley. This was a direct defiance of the United States government's orders for all Indians to remain on reservation lands. In response, the U.S. government sent 3 columns of troops to the area to advance a 3-pronged attack on the encampment. General Gibson's led cavalry from the east, while General Terry advanced with his men from the west, and General Crooks descended with his column from the north. Crooks traveled with 262 Crow and Shoshone warriors who warned him that the Sioux force in the area was significant. On June 17, the Sioux and their allies surprised Crooks, and a battle ensued along Rosebud Creek, a precursor to the Battle of Little Bighorn. Even though significantly outnumbered, Crook's men stood their ground with invaluable help from the Crow and Shoshone while the Sioux retreated. Now remember, in our previous videos, what do Native Americans do? They sell themselves, and it's sick. Don't find yourself doing the same thing. Okay, continuing. Just 8 days after the Battle of Rosebud on June 25, General Terry warned his troop, including the 7th Cavalry led by Custer, not to attack the Sioux encampment without his word. However, Custer ignored orders and warnings from scouts who spoke of thousands of Indians in the Bighorn River Valley. Instead, Custer pressed forward with his unit of 276 soldiers. Quickly, the Indian warriors surrounded Custer and his men. There was no mercy. The natives outmanned and outgunned the cavalry. They attacked with vengeance, littering the U.S. soldiers with arrows, hitting them with clubs, and striking with bullets from Henry repeating rifles, a weapon far superior to the cavalry's single-shot rifles. As a sign of victory, the Indians took scalps, something their European colonizers taught them, a practice that would ironically be used to paint the natives as savage. Among the many great warriors was Nicholas Black Elk, who took his first scalp that day at the age of 13. Indian warriors stripped the U.S. soldiers of clothing and weaponry despite Sitting Bull's orders to respect the enemy and take nothing. The Battle of Greasy Grass along the Little Bighorn River in Montana was over almost as soon as it began, and victory belonged to the tribes. Then the newspapers came out and gave this headline. It says, "The Sioux Indians kill Custer. Massacre." Notice they call it a massacre. A Little Bighorn wipes out 276 United States cavalry men. Chief Sitting Bull leads Indians in revolt as Sioux go on warpath. It's ironic how the verbiage is always very derogatory when it comes to Native Americans versus, when the cavalry and the Europeans, the white people, all of a sudden they are so gracious in killing others. It's not depicted as the same. Oh, it was a war, but for us it was a massacre. Now, here is another picture of Sitting Bull. He's a beautiful man, but sad what happened to him. Here he is. You'd think he was a very plain man, but he was very spiritual, and that's what I love about him. Who was Sitting Bull? Sitting Bull Tatanka Iyotake was born near Grand River in what was then known as the Dakota, South Dakota today in 1831. He was born to the Hunkpapa people, part of the Lakota Sioux tribe. At 25 years old, Sitting Bull followed his father's path and became a leader of the Strong Hearts, a group of elite warriors. He was known to be prayerful, sought direction from the Great Spirit through fasting, humbling himself. Because of his spiritual foundation, it was his strength. Thus he was always brave, generous, strong, and wise. Sitting Bull was known as Wichasha Wakan. Now I'm not saying these right. Wichasha Wakan, a holy man who could receive insights or revelation about the future. These insights and revelations brought together men who shared similar visions. Sitting Bull understood through Wakan Tanka. Many of his visions were received. Most tribes believed in the existence of Wakan Tanka, also known as the Great Spirit, or the Great Holy Ones, that formed their spiritual belief structure about the world around them. In 1875, before one of his most famous visions prior to the Battle of Little Bighorn, Sitting Bull carried out the sun dance along with over 2,000 Lakota warriors. The Northern Cheyenne, Hunkpapa, Oglala, Sans Mark, and Minneconjou camped together for a sundance with both the Cheyenne medicine man, White Bull, or Ice, and Sitting Bull in association. This ceremonial alliance preceded their fighting together in 1876. Immediately prior to this, he made offerings by going without food and water for 2 days and cutting flesh from his arm. After dancing for hours, humbling himself, he retained more spiritual strength and insight. Sometime in the early spring of 1876, Sitting Bull climbed into a hilltop, seeking a vision. In his vision, a great dust storm swirled down upon the small white cloud that resembled a Lakota village. Through the whirlwind, Sitting Bull could see soldiers marching. It was in this vision where he saw white troops and their hats falling from the sky into their camp like grasshoppers. He interpreted this to mean he would gain victory again against the U.S. forces. Sitting Bull intoned, "The Great Spirit has given our enemies to us. We are to destroy them. We do not know who they are. They may be soldiers." I, too, observed. No one then knew who the enemy were, of what tribe. They were soon to find out. Sitting Bull was a war leader and spiritual leader behind whom the Sioux Nation united to resist domination by white people. Sitting Bull's anti-treaty stance won him many followers, and around 1869, he was made supreme leader of the autonomous bands of the Lakota Sioux, the first person to ever hold such a title. Caring and generosity are key to developing the followers, two qualities that it said that Sitting Bull possessed in great abundance. It was these traits, along with his embodiment of tribal values, that pushed him forward to the ultimate leadership position. Sitting Bull's refusal to adopt any dependence on the U.S. government meant that at times he and his small band of warriors lived isolated on the plains. When Native Americans were threatened by the United States, numerous members of various Sioux bands and other tribes, such as the Northern Cheyenne, came to Sitting Bull's camp. His reputation for strong medicine developed as he continued to evade the European Americans. After the ultimatum on January 1st, 1876, when the U.S. Army began to track down as hostiles those Sioux and other living off the reservation, Native Americans gathered at Sitting Bull's camp. He took an active role in encouraging this unity camp. He sent scouts to the reservations to recruit warriors and told the Hunkpapa to share supplies with those Native Americans who joined them. An example of his generosity was Sitting Bull's provision for Wooden Legs Northern Cheyenne's tribe. They had been impoverished by Captain Reynolds' March 17, 1876 attack and fled to Sitting Bull's camp for safety. Over the course of the first half of 1876, Sitting Bull's camp continually expanded as natives joined him for safety in numbers. His leadership had attracted warriors and families, creating an extensive village estimated at more than 10,000 people. Lieutenant Colonel Custer came across this large camp in June 25, 1876. Sitting Bull did not take a direct military role in the ensuing battle. Instead, he acted as a spiritual leader. Remember that. The essence of Sitting Bull's success as a leader came in his willingness to step forward and take responsibility. He asked for the right to cross back and forth into Canada whenever he wished, and for a reservation of his own on the Little Missouri River near the Black Hills. 14 years after the battle, Sitting Bull and his people found themselves confined to the Standing Rock Reservation in South Dakota, a once proud band of Plains Indians now being forced to subsist on meager government food rations while shivering against the cold of impending winter. Born of an internal commitment to group values, Sitting Bull believes so strongly that in the clan and its aims and objectives that his image and that of the clan became as one. To actively promote personal development shouldn't be shied away from, as when personal development and great group values coincide, strong leaders emerge. Sitting Bull's other great teachings comes in his kindness and generosity to followers. Yes, time is precious, but the results yielded far outweigh this. Carve time out of busy schedules to devote to followers, helping others develop us to develop too. Sitting Bull's death. How did Sitting Bull wish to be remembered? Yet Sitting Bull said, "I wish to be remembered that I was the last man of my tribe to surrender my rifle." Amidst this climate of great despair, a spiritual movement known as the Ghost Dance had spread among the many reservation-bound tribes of the American West. Taught by a northern Paiute mystic named Wovoka, this circle dance, if properly practiced, prophesied an end to wide expansion and the restoration of prosperity for native peoples. Unsurprisingly, authorities sought to suppress the seditious dance and detain those who would foster its growth. Now listen to that. Unsurprisingly, authorities sought to suppress the seditious dance and detain those who would foster its growth. What is the government doing today? Anyone who is speaking truth, anyone who is doing anything to help another, they are being called out, they are being jailed, they are being imprisoned. Remember that. We will continue. Convinced that he was an active Ghost Dance supporter, James McLaughlin, a man in charge of the Standing Rock Agency, ordered the arrest of Sitting Bull. At roughly 6 a.m. in the morning of December 15, 1890, 38 agency policemen, themselves members of the Sioux who were dubbed Metal Breasts because of the badges they were wearing, burst into Sitting Bull's cabin and hauled the great chief away from his wives and children into the outside air of the chill pre-dawn. The commotion had drawn the attention of Sitting Bull's supporters, and many began to gather at the scene in protest, some of them armed. Hoping to avoid a confrontation, Sitting Bull initially consented to go with the officers, but his 14-year-old son, Crowfoot, disgustedly cried out, "You always called yourself a brave chief. Now you are allowing yourself to be taken by the Metal Breasts." The stinging rebuke changed Sitting Bull's mind, and he suddenly refused to be led away. As the chief was then manhandled toward a waiting horse, one of his furious supporters raised a rifle and fired at the officers. Flexively, a policeman named Bullhead discharged his pistol into Sitting Bull's chest at point-blank range, which in turn prompted another metal breast named Red Tomahawk to shoot the Sioux chief in the head, killing the 59-year-old instantly. The incident would later become known as the Battle in the Dark and exists today as another tragic waypoint along the troubled pathway of Plains Indian history in the 19th century America. Sitting Bull's body would be buried at Fort Yates, North Dakota, only to be disinterred in 1953 upon the wishes of his family and reburied beside his birthplace in Mobridge, South Dakota. Here is a picture of the cabin, and right there by the front door on this side, they say that that's where where he passed away. And that's pretty sad. Again, the reason why I am bringing out this, some of the most wonderful blessings that we've had from our chiefs is that they were spiritual leaders. And as we find out and talk about Sitting Bull, again, spirituality and the sun dances. Now, I don't know if you have even a clue about the sun dances. We were with the Arikara and the Hidatsa and the Mandans, and they were saying I think it was the Arikaras that were very scary. No, the Mandans. And when they would fight against their enemies. See, when you do the sun dances, you learn what pain is, so that when you are shot, you keep going. You don't stop. You keep going. You're fighting for your people. You're fighting for your values. You're fighting for everything. You're using the Spirit, the power of your body, the power of the Holy Spirit, or the power of the white, Tatanka, whatever it was, to heal you and to give you the strength to be who you are meant to be, to stand with your virtues, to fight. When we were with the Arikaras, they were telling us that when the Mandans would fight and the Hidatsas, and when they would go against their enemies, the Mandans, I believe it was, now you could correct me, you Arikara tribe, when the Mandans would go out to fight, they were muscled, they were huge, and their enemies, when they came upon them, because of the sun dances, here they would be lined up, and then the people who they were fighting, their enemies, would be lined up against them. They would have their spears, and they would actually, the Mandans would actually show their enemy. The reason for having these videos is for you to take a look at the chiefs and how they handled this invasion and the atrocities that that was incurred upon them, and that is happening to you today as well. And you look at, again, his leadership, Sitting Bull's leadership ability. Now, when he was young, he was already doing things, he was out hunting, he was outstripping, he was being prayerful, and he knew who the Great Spirit was. He had visions, and I don't like the way the white people explain visions, that it's some mystic thing. It is not mystic. It is when you have the intuitiveness to see in your mind or to be led, and it's not you, you know it. because it's full of wisdom, it's pure, and it's right. And it's not, haywire, and you're not, going left and right and right and left. It's like a very clear path, very, very clear. And these revelations and visions that he had, he was a visionary man, and he was wonderful. And there was nothing mystic about it. It was wonderful. It was real. The Great Spirit that he honored, and he knew those innate abilities and the innate rights that we had from above for the land, to have freedom, to have the lands, to go and hunt, and to take care of our families, to teach them, just basically to walk uprightly and to do that which is virtuous and good to others. I'm going to read this again. At 25 years old, Sitting Bull followed his father's path and became a leader of the Strong Hearts, a group of elite warriors. He was known to be prayerful, sought direction from the Great Spirit through fasting, humbling himself. Because of his spiritual foundation, it was his strength. Thus, he was always brave, generous, strong, and wise. And this same Strong Hearts, this is what they do. They were taught to be caring and generous, and that was the key to developing followers. The two qualities that it said that Sitting Bull possessed in great abundance was these traits, along with his embodiment of tribal values, that pushed him forward to ultimate leadership positions. And his refusal to be, to adopt dependency. And this is what each of, and again, I'm speaking to you, Native American tribes, all of you tribal members, you leaders, we have been taught dependency, to depend upon the federal government in many of my videos. That's why this whole theme of survival is this year, because there is no one but yourself you need to depend upon, and the holy ones, God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. And I've had somebody that wrote to me and said, you are all animals. You never had a religion. I mean, and the filthy things that I have been told in the comments, and I just go, ding, I delete it. Because whoever thinks that is so narrow-minded and does not do their research. We indigenous people we understood. Christ walked among us. This is our strength. Why do we know the things we do, our medicines? Why were we taught reverence and, kindness, generosity, not to hoard, but to take care of Mother Earth? Because she gives to us. She is our blessing. Oil, gas, all of these things are here for our abundance, to take care of us. They are not evil unless you make it evil. And most of everybody who uses that and the oil corporations have made this filthy evil. Instead of giving to the Native Americans what is their share, they have cheated them. They have used gauges it is filthy. And when Eloise Cobell fought her fight, she came down to Herfino, New Mexico, and she said, her and her attorney said, all of you people should be living in palaces, but you're not, because you're not being meted out what is yours. And these Caucasian people, these oil companies, are just cutting your throat, and they are keeping you in poverty. It is horrible. They are not fair, and this is the evil that still exists. But when we use it for good, we bless others. So there's a lot to see in Sitting Bull, another one of the great leaders. And remember his traits, his virtues, how prayerful. Grandma is constantly admonishing you to be prayerful. My grandfather, my Nolly, who walked on water, said, you pray When you get up, you pray when you walk, you pray when you wash your face, when you brush your teeth, you pray when you brush your hair, when you, again, cook your food and you partake of it. You pray and get up early in the morning before the sun. Use your pollen. Bless your family, yourself, the 4 directions. You have much to be thankful for. And I said, Grandpa, that means I'm going to be praying 24 hours a day. And he said, yes, that is right. That is how you thwart the negativity, the evil that is about you, trying to destroy you. And again, 2 powers that are here on this earth. There is Lucifer and there is God. That's it. And if you don't believe me, when you wake up and take your last breath and you wake up on the other side, you're going to say, oh, gee whiz, Grandma was right. It is true. I do not tell you things that are not true. These are blessings. We help one another. This is what we are here on this earth for, to help, to fight the fight, to be tested whether we make right choices or not. This is so important, to love our family members, to lead and to guide them. And again, you know, I have this understanding. Yes, Christianity came, it came later. I don't care what you call it. But the Native Americans had God. Christ walked this earth. Read the books about him. Every tribe, I don't care, from China and around all the world to every continent, he was in their life. And they remember him. They've written about him. And, you know, the first one I heard ever when I was little was Quetzalcoatl, you know. That, I mean, who didn't he see? This was after he was crucified. So, whether you believe that again, it's up to you. But it is truth. And I always say, then, what does my grandfather say? If you don't believe somebody, pray about it. Get down on your knees or sit down and somewhere and ponder it, because you will know whether it is right or wrong. You don't just make rash decisions and believe. That is where you get in trouble. There's a lot of wisdom in this that I want you to understand. This is my Navajo Grandma, and I love each and every one of you. I love my Native American tribes, but the problem is that so many of them are not right. Everybody is following. The only things this is what I believe, and this is why I ran for Navajo Nation president. I am sick and tired of our Navajo and our tribe, every tribe in the United States, or bands, it doesn't matter, the rancherias. They have learned the 3 nasty evils: power, control, and greed. It's horrible. And that is what everybody wants. That is what Lucifer wants. It is not godly. To have power over somebody so that you can do with them what you want, and then, or greed. You will take the life of people over money for things that you cannot hold on to. Like I said, when you pass on, you're not going to take anything with you. Only what's in your heart, all your wisdom, that's it. And this body is alone. It is alone to you. And you need to care for it. And there's so much. There's power, greed, control. Greed and power. I mean, control. It is filthy. So it's if you look at each tribe, that is how filthy they are. Now they are good. There are good men, but not enough. And this is what Tecumseh would tell all of you. Gather your good leaders together and get rid of the evil. You can pray and you can have the power to fight and win. So this is what This is what Sitting Bull did. And though he had the sun dances, he was prayerful, he was humble, and he looked to the heavens for the answers. Not in his hand, not controlling, nothing to control or have power or greed. I hope you remember these things. This is wisdom. I am telling you the truths of life. We need this now and today, because there's a time coming when there will be somebody who does take over this land. And they're doing it now. They're quietly and like a fox and a horrible wolf coming in, and they're taking everything from you. You need to stand up. Stand up for what is right and virtuous. Be prayerful and remain prayerful. This is my blessing, my grandma's blessing on you, that you will stand for what is right. You will remember our chiefs and what they stood for, and that we will stand together and not be broken as one twig, but as a group that you cannot break us. And this is my love I send to you. Hajoanakai, Nsidakesonakai, Sodadolzinonakai. A edebe hidne hashtandika. Akuni nihidiyin hikijidleo. Yat ehon nadika. Akut albansis case. I pray that we will pray always. Let it be your strength. I promise you, as you do, that you will be blessed and you will overcome the evil that is about us. Hagone, I love you, and I'll see you again with another chief and their qualities.